let's make that a reference. Let's go to our shifting controller, and let's look at this. I think this thing here should be about the same material as this rubbery thing there. Maybe. We'll try it, and we'll see. Cup holder rubber. There we go. Okay. This thing here, these 4 pieces, I'm going to assign a new material. Oops, not a new material. I'm going to assign a new material the other way by going to favorite. And there's my Mia. And let's call this stick shift leather Mia. And on this, we're going to name it that. And we go to color. And we're going to click on leather in here. Okay. But this leather that's there is not a color corrected leather. All right. So just don't click anything yet. I'm going to show you. I'm going to click leather. And we have these 2 colors. I could either color correct both of these colors, or I could just color correct the result. And obviously I want to just color correct the result and just have one node. So I'm going to click on the checkerboard per color. I'm going to add a gamma, correct, 0.454. And then I'm going to go to the map for value here, and then go down to leather, 3D texture, leather. Now the reason we're picking all these 3D textures is because they don't need anything fancy with them. They'll just work, okay? I mean, they're not going to just magically look like leather or magically look perfect, but they'll work. Click the map button. They'll work better than these 2D textures, which won't place correctly without a little bit of manipulation, okay? So again, we're going to come to the cell color, and we're going to pick this, and I'm going to go here, say with that, and then let's go to the crease color, and we'll make it, let's say this, but darker. Okay, maybe I don't want that. Maybe I want it the other way around. Let's just see what it looks like, okay? It's always best just to kind of look at it and see before we make any big decisions. It actually doesn't look terribly bad. Let's get a little closer to it. I'm just rendering a little chunk of this because obviously it's gonna take longer and longer the longer we play with this stuff. Okay, so it does look, obviously grid-like this looks. So we're gonna have to add a bump to it. We can play with the cell size just to kind of knock it down some. It's kind of like scaling it. Okay, if I lower this, we get a lot more in here. So maybe we'll go to 0.25. For the density, we pull this down. You can see that we actually lose a lot of those guys. We want to keep that up. Spottiness is going to play with the levels of the individual ones. Randomness, if I pull this out, you see we have basically like a grid. Pull randomness back up, and we have this other area. Creases, we'll get rid of the crease lines, so it's just like a coloring. We want the creases. And threshold is just going to play with the blending of these things. Let me make the cell size a little bit bigger so you can see that threshold one a little bit clearer. So see how we're getting more of a gradient in here. Where this, we're basically getting like flat areas on top, and then we'll get a little bit of softness as it falls down. So now we'll do another render. We'll check it out and see if it looks good. All right, maybe a little bit too low on the cell size. Let's go to 0.2. And I don't think I want to have my cell size or my crease color so far away from the other one. I think I'm actually going to pull it up and bring these colors a little bit closer together. If we look at a picture of what leather looks like, you can see that the colors are not terribly too far off. They're pretty close to one another. Okay, so something like this is going to work better than what we had before, where these colors were just opposite. The other thing, if we look at this piece of leather, you can see that we have different variations in here of color kind of sweeping through this. I'm going to go to my cell color that's here, okay, this guy, and I'm going to click on the map button for this, and under 3D textures, I'm going to click on stucco. Okay, now what this is going to do, if we look at our display out here, is it's coloring it red and blue, because that's the color of the red and blue, and then the line work, if I hit the back button, is the crease color. So I'm just going to go and pick two colors from this stucco color. And what we're going to see is that we're going to get a variation of color inside this. And it's going to look a little bit more like leather because it's not like we saw in the other one, not one solid image. So let's get a little bit closer to this. So we're going to get a variation of color on here as opposed to just like one solid color. And it's, I may zoom in to see it, but you can definitely see we have that variation of color. And I actually think that I picked one of the colors is the wrong color. Let me pick this first color again. Go with something maybe a little bit darker like that. There we go. That's looking much nicer. You can see how we have a variation of color in here as opposed to just one solid color on top of another solid color. Okay. Now, again, highlights, reflectivity, all that jazz is need to be adjusted. So I'm going to go back to my very beginning of this and take my reflectivity down to maybe 0.1, let's say, and then 0.8 for glossiness. And then I'm going to go to my hypershade. Okay, and I'm going to find my stick shift. Here it is, stick shift. I'm going to graph it out, double click or click that double arrow. And if we look at where this stuff is laid out, this here is my alpha. I don't need this. Okay, this I can just delete. Okay, if I hold my mouse over this, you can see where it says leather 2, leather 2.out alpha to stick shift leather diffuse a whatever. I don't need this one, so I'm going to delete that guy. So I'm going to click on this, and this is what we should have. We should have the stick shift. We should have the gamma correct going into the stick shift. We should have the leather going into the gamma correct. We should have the stucco going into the leather, and we should have a place 3D texture going into the leather, place 3D texture going into stucco. So what I need to do is I'm going to take this, I'm just moving these things around, and I'm going to take this leather here, because wherever this leather happens, this exact leathery pattern, I want that to be my bump map. Okay, so I'm going to click on stick shift. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom where we see bump, and I'm just going to middle drag the leather onto standard bump. Okay, and you'll see in here that we get a bump map if I zoom in really close. Okay, and I can look at it and see, okay, this is most likely going to be backwards, so I'm going to have to reverse it. There we go, so something like that. Now we can render this out and see what it's going to look like. And we have something now that looks much more like leather should look. Okay, I don't like this white specular in here, so again I want to go through the material, drop a gamma correct on the reflection color, save my scene because I just slowed down a second, and then just pick a color. And again, I'm going to make it somewhat desaturated and somewhat bright. The cool thing about this whole setup is that once we have a material like this, where we like this leather and it looks cool, we could save this leather out, and anytime we need leather, we can go and grab it. There it was before, there it is now. You can see it's a subtle difference, but it makes a whole lot of difference, making it look a little bit more realistic. Okay, so I think that's looking good. I probably want to take my bump map down just slightly, maybe 0.5. Okay. There we go. That looks good there. There it was before. You can see it's just, again, a subtle difference, but it makes a big difference, that subtle difference. Okay, so now let's close that. And if we click on that leather again and graph it out, we have two Place 3D textures. Okay, so this one here is attached to leather. So if I grab this one and scale it up, it's going to scale up the leather texture. If I grab this one and scale it up, it's going to scale up the stucco texture. Okay, so I have to keep those things in mind. So I'm going to grab this one and rename it Stick Shift Leather 3D Texture. Grab the other one, and I'm going to label that one Stick Shift Stucco 3D Texture. There we go. Now I know which is which. Okay, so there's that part. Now let's go into this thing, and I think this guy here probably wants to be, I would assume something like this color, but maybe just glossier, just like really smooth and shiny. So let's go to Mia Materials. Let's drop a gamma correct on the color. You can see how that's just routine. Just drop the gamma correct on the color. And let's pick one of these colors here. Because the stick shift is pretty light, maybe we want to go a little bit more darker. I don't want to go in the orange realm though, like too saturated. I'll keep this relatively neutral. Okay, so something like that. Let's see how that looks. Save again. Come back out. Now if this starts slowing the entire thing down, I could always come in here and start turning stuff off. I can turn my cup holders off. I can turn my storage tray off. I can turn my vents off. Okay, and just keep the frame and the stick shift on. You can see they only rendered, it only took 8 seconds to render that frame compared to what we had before, whatever it was, 20 seconds or so. Okay, I think it probably needs to maybe be a little bit more in the orange realm. I think I probably went a little bit too far in the gray. So let me pull up my saturation a little bit. I like the coloring on it though. Maybe a little bit of glossiness down, just to kind of spread it out a little bit more. I think I like that. I think that's looking good. Okay, let's leave that there for now. We can come back and play with it later if we need to. Just so you can see with something really glossy or something really reflective, if I take this glossiness down, I want to pull it back up after I'm done. But just so you can see what it's going to do, you can see how this glossiness is basically taking our reflection and blurring it. Here's the before, there's the after. So it blurs our reflection. With this cranked up, it's going to sharpen that reflection. Okay, so there's our difference in what the glossiness factor is doing. Okay, so I'm just going to put this back down to, maybe I'll even put it to 0.8. Let's see where 0.8 gets us. I want it shiny. I want it to look like it's a smooth piece of polished plastic. Let me take that one out. Yeah, it's not a huge difference. That'll work. Okay. All right. So now in this thing, we have two pieces. One is this NURB sphere right there. The other one is this planar trim. Okay. And if we look at a stick shift, knob. There we go. It's essentially, in this case, they're showing, it's hard to see in those. We're looking for more of something like that. There we go. So if you look at this, it's essentially like a piece of plastic here, or a piece of glass, and then inside it is a picture of this 1, 2, 3 reverse, whatever. I've only driven with stick shift ones. And you can see in some cases that the reverse is on the right. In some cases, the reverse is on the left. Okay, so you have some freedom there to play around with that and get different results. Okay, so essentially this guy here is going to be a piece of glass, and then the piece underneath it is going to be the actual label. Oops. So there's a label, there's a piece of glass. So let's grab that and go to Assign New Material. Go to Assign Existing Material, or not existing, Favorite Material, Blend, Mia. Grab the glass. Lighting and shading. Assign Favorite Material, Mia. Wonderful. Stick shift. Knob. Glass. Mia. Okay. So we'll go to presets, and we could go in here to one of these guys, but it's such a simple thing, I'm not even going to really play with it too much. I'm going to go to physical glass. There we go. I'm going to come down to refraction, which is where our glass settings are. And I'm going to set this index of refraction to 1.1. Okay. The index of refraction, or IOR as some people refer to it in the biz, is basically how much light is bending or how much the image is bending based on the surface. Okay. So if we had a light ray, it goes through, let's say in this case it's going through water. Once it hits the new surface, it's going to break off and go in a different direction. Okay? And how much it breaks off or how much it changes is what that index of refraction is referring to. And there's actually specific values for different things, like here's air, helium, hydrogen, here's water, ethanol, benzene, and so on. Okay? So 1.1 is not much. 1 is basically none. 1.1 is a slight little bit. Okay, so I have that done. I'm just going to set that off to the side. So I'm looking at my translates. Whenever I move something away, I look at my translates to find out which one of these is kind of zeroed out. And then I can pull it away. And when I'm done, I just re-zero out that guy. Okay, as opposed to moving it and then saying, okay, and now I need to move it back. And then you spend a half hour trying to push this in here and push this back down and scoot it over and scoot it over and scoot it over until it gets back into place. Okay. And if there isn't one that's in here, I can go to Modify Freeze Transformations, and it'll reset all these to 0 so that I can just reset it and pop it back. Okay. So now I'm going to do the label. So I just scooted that guy over so I can get to the label. So another new Mia. Favorite Material, Mia. Stick, shift, knob, label, Mia. And on here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to connect a file. There's no thing in here that I can click on that'll say stick, shift, picture. Okay, so I have to actually go to File, and I have to create a picture or get one from the internet. If you go to cgtextures.com, on this website, they have a bunch of free textures that you can use for whatever purpose you feel like you want to use them for. Okay? You can use it commercially, you can use it professionally, personally, hobbyily, if that's a word. You can use it. And I doubt they have a picture of a stick shift in here, which they don't. Okay? I didn't think they would. But these ones are all free to use. We could also go to Google I look up a stick shift label. Now these ones here we cannot use professionally. Okay? I can't grab any single one of these images and use them in a commercial or something I'm making money off of. And realistically, if you look at the picture of it, it's a pretty simple thing just to kind of create this image. All right. So if you can't find something in here that you like, which I'm not really finding anything in here that I like, I can use Photoshop and just create an image that I want to use. Now, Google Images, while we're waiting for Photoshop to open, does have search tools, and under the it's under the advanced search settings. Nope, it's the advanced search. Let's go back. Advanced search. Inside the advanced search, you can actually search for usage rights, and you can say free to use, share, or modify even commercially, and get images that you could use for such a thing. Okay. So we're in Photoshop, new document. We're going to make this 1024 by 1024 pixels. Now the reason we're going with this size is because if we're in Maya and we're rendering this thing out and it's 960 pixels this way and 540 pixels that way, okay, we're nowhere near 1024. Well, we're kind of near 1024. But if we look at how much this image is being used, the only way we would use the entire 1024 is if we're zoomed up right on top of that image of the stick shift. Okay. But I also like to make sure that I go a little bit higher than what I'm going to be getting close to. So I think I'm probably going to be like about here for most of my shots. I don't think I'm going to be zoomed in on that thing at all. If I was zoomed in, I'd go with a bigger image. I'm not going to be zoomed in, so I'm going to keep it at 1024. So I'm just going to go in with my brush tool, make it smaller, take the hardness up. You can do this 15,000 different ways. I'm just going to use my marker here. Oops, make sure I create a cool one. Okay, I'm just going to click, hold shift, and drag across. There we go. And then I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm just going to create a line like that. Okay. Then I can go with my move tool and just copy this over. Like I said, you can do this a number of different ways. I'm just doing it the quick way, I think. Obviously, these are off center, so I'm just going to move these up until they're centered. And I think they're probably distributed a little bit unevenly, so let me just scoot that guy over. I'm going to delete part of this. Oops, harder brush. There we go. I'll make it a little bit bigger. I'm imagining a circle on here. Okay, and if it helps you to imagine a circle, you can actually draw a circle. Okay, so there's our circle, and our texture has to fit within that circle. I'll even fill it in so you can see what it's going to look like. Okay, so I'm just grabbing my layers, moving my layers, adjusting my layers until I get them where I want them to be. I can go in with the text tool and type a 1. There we go, something like that. I can shrink those lines down too. Oops. Come on. Enter. There we go. 2. Grab all 3 of these. 2. 2. There we go. 3. There we go. 4. There we go. It's exciting stuff. And then, of course, we need reverse. Some cars you have to pay extra for, but not on this one. pull this up. I'm going to shrink these lines down. That way I can fit my numbers in here better. Like I said, we have to fit within that circle. 45R. And just for my own personal reference, stick shift. Okay, the R can come right down. Now I've actually gone 1, 4, 2, 3, which I think is probably bad feng shui for a stick shift. So let me just renumber these. 2, 3, 4, 5. That's why we use reference. Okay, now we take these. We take these. I'm just going to scoot them down a touch. There we go. So we're centered. I'm going to take my lines that are here and just merge them into one. And then I'm just going to go with my eraser and just kind of hit the bottoms of these and the tops of those. There we go. Okay. So now this is going to be a white label with black on it. So if I wanted something different, if I wanted black with white, I would just color it black with white. Okay, like this one is black with white on there. This one is black with white. This one is, well, it's metal with that engraving on it. Okay, that'd actually be modeled. This wouldn't be something different. So if I want to invert this, I can just go to the top, make a new node called invert, and there we go. So now I'll save it as. And I'm going to put it inside of my Sarcona 2510 Work Car Center source images. I'm saving it as an if. I'm going to call it stick shift label. Make sure my stuff is labeled correctly. Oops. This will pop up saying, do you want it Amiga or Maya? We want Maya. Okay, so now that we have that, we'll go back to our label, back to the attribute editor, back to the color swatch, back to the folder, and we can pick stick shift label. And then if we hit 6 inside here, there's our label. Okay. Now obviously this is facing, in my case, the wrong way. Yours may be perfect, but in my case it's the wrong way. I can't rotate this because then it's going to fall off. Okay. So what I want to do is come back to my Mia, come back to the color arrow, come back to my file right here, and I'm going to go to the place 2D texture, and I'm just going to rotate it. So I'm going to go to rotate UV negative 90. So 90 went the other way. There we go. Now I could have also gone, there's another one up here, rotate frame 90 or negative 90, and that'll do the exact same thing. Okay. So now we have that perfectly on there. See how it fits nice and neat. I take this and reset it to 0. I can't see it, no big deal. But when I render it, I will be able to see it. Or I should be able to see it, as I should say. And there it is. So we have this little picture, and we have this piece of glass going over the top of the piece of picture. And you see a little highlight from there. It looks gorgeous. Okay. I'll probably shrink the texture down. I think it's just hitting it a little bit too close to the edge. So resave as an if, stick shift label, yes, back into Maya. I want to get back to that stick shift label here, but I don't want to have to move this out. Okay, I don't want to have to do that and then click on it. So if I go up in the attribute area to focus, in here I can pick on different items that I was just on. So file 1 is the file I was just on. So if I click on that, there's the file. I hit reload. The image shrinks because we shrunk it. And now if we render, we should get a little bit smaller image on there. And again, it's the last thing that we will see. There we go. So it fits a little bit better, a little bit nicer. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. So we'll save again as we're going. Stick shift is done. Reference it. Good. And then the next part of this is going to be a bit more difficult, which is the radio and the AC. Okay. So if you need to take a little break, walk around, clear your head, do that, because this part is going to get a little bit trickier because of how we have to get this on here. Okay. So if you need to, you can go back to YouTube real quick and watch a monkey video. All right, so I need to get something on each one of these images. So if I go in here to these types of things, and I'm just going to show you what's going to happen. We'll do the radio first. That's going to be the harder one. Okay, I'm going to marquee all the radio pieces. I'm going to put a Mia on them, because I'm going to get a Mia anyway. Radio base Mia. Okay. Now I want labels on here, but it's not going to be like that. That was like an easy one because it's only one surface. But here we're dealing with multiple surfaces and multiple kinds of things. I could create a texture for this with a picture on it and call it a day, and then do the same thing with this one, the same thing with that one, the same thing with that one. I also have buttons down here I could do the exact same thing for, but if you see, remember we kind of clustered these 3 buttons together and these 3 buttons together. Okay, so it can be a little bit trickier to kind of line those things up. So I'm going to click on the color, and I'm going to map a ramp to this, just so we can see how this is laid out. Okay, now if we look at what the ramp is, it's basically just a picture of a gradient. And on the bottom left here is basically the bottom left of our image in Photoshop. And on the top right, you guessed it, the top right in Photoshop. So if we were bringing a picture of whatever, like on the screen here, we want to have like an actual like screen. Okay, you can see that on the bottom left where the red would be, there is no red in this screen. Okay, if I pull it out, no red. Okay, and the same thing on this big area, there's no red on here, there's a little bit of orange. What's happening is the texture is basically being spread out over this entire surface. Let me duplicate this, scoot them over, and go to Edit NURBS and say Untrim. Ah, there we go. There's the red, and then here is this coloring up here. That's why we're getting this kind of nonsense, because it's doing that. Now, one thing we can do to these surfaces is if I go into my my attribute editor, and I use these arrows to get all the way back to where we see the shape node, there's a texture map, and I can say fix texture warp, and sometimes it'll fix it from that. In this case, it doesn't look like it's going to do that, so can't do that in this case. So that's not going to work. So what I need to do is I need to figure out a way to place the texture exactly where I want it to place. Okay, and just so you can see too, you don't think I'm just, wasting your time, I'm going to map a picture to this. So I'm going to go grab a file, and I'll grab LCD car screen. It doesn't matter which one. I'll just grab this. View image. I'm just going to copy it. I'm going to bring it in Photoshop. I'm going to use my pen tool just to isolate this. Not very cleanly, I don't care, I just want to grab it. Now, I could have also just went to Google and found a picture of Windows background too, but whatever. There we go. Wonderful. So now let's save this as an if. Radio 2. Radio 2. And you can see that on here, that picture comes in, okay, it's sideways, so again, we'll rotate it, -90. Okay, and we get like this huge image, we don't get like the picture of the screen, okay? So we have to figure out a way to get this placed correctly. Now there's an interactive placement, so if I click on that, okay, maybe I can, oops. move this around a little bit or play with this some, but it's not going to get where I need it to get, okay? So what I need to do is come up with a different strategy to get that thing to place in the exact spot I need it to get placed at. So what we have is if I click on the map button, I'm going to right click on the Word file, and here I can do it as a projection. Okay, so basically I'm going to project my texture onto this image or onto this piece of geometry. So under here, under projection type, I'm going to choose, I'll choose planar just so we can see this. Okay, and then if I come into, let me go to the hypershade so we can see what's happening when I create that. Radio face, graph. Okay, typically when we create a file, it works like this. We would have the MIA material, we would have the file, and then we have a place 2D texture, and this is just connected in here. But because we did this as a projection, we have this projection node that comes out, and then we have this place 3D texture in here that's helping us place this 3D texture. So if I click on the place 3D texture, I come out here, I move this up, this is how my file is going to get placed. Okay, so I can, let me hit 5 so I can see it. I can move this like so, and scale it, and rotate it, and align it with the screen like that. And then let's say I go into my file and I grab that picture that we just had. And I hit 6. Okay. Now I'm not seeing anything in here, and that's only because when you do a projection, it's like too much math for Maya to calculate in quick mode. So we go to renderer and we can turn on viewport. We save first. Always save. Viewport 2.0. And that didn't help us out at all. Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't. So let's go back to default. Let's go to render. We'll actually have to render this out so we can see it. We should see that that image that we had is placed perfectly on the screen area. And because that material is assigned to everything, it's doing it to the entire thing and kind of like looping it and repeating it. Okay, so the point of this is that we're going to have like several materials for this radio face. Okay, and we're going to have to decide where things are going to be at. So I'm just going to undo basically all the stuff that I just did. I'll just go back to even that. Okay, delete this stuff. Grab this and assign the default material, Lambert 1, and delete unused nodes. Okay. All right, so now we're basically back to where we were originally. Okay. So now looking at our radio face, we want to see where the textures are, where's the imagery at. Like in this one, there's actual text on the buttons itself, and there's nothing on the back here. This is actually going to be an easier method to do than adding a bunch of text to this thing, because we can basically put like one material here, and then all of our labels would just be on these things. Okay, that's probably going to be the easiest way for us to do something like that. Some of them, like that one still has it. Some of them do have like text actually on the radio face itself. I'm not pulling up anything specifically right now, but they do. Oh, there we go. I just saw one. Like this guy here, there's labels on the radio face itself, like that volume push and the shaker, whatever it is. Okay, so we could obviously do stuff like that as well using the same process that we're going to be using. So I'm going to start off with, we'll start off with the screen because that's going to be a little bit different than everything else. Okay, and the screen should be basically the same way we did our little stick shift down here, is that we have a screen that's projecting the information, and then we have a piece of glass. So I'm going to duplicate this. First, I'm going to zoom in on this and see that I have an extra bevel, apparently. Oops, so I have a surface that didn't trim. So let me trim that. There we go. It happens every once in a while that I forget something. All right, so I'm going to take this piece of glass and duplicate it and just scoot it up. And I can make it bigger if I need to. Just to make sure it covers it. Okay, and this will be my glass, and I'll just label it glass. And again, I'll freeze the transform so I can duplicate it and scoot it out. Let's go to favorite Mia. Glass screen Mia. And again, I'm going to go in here to glass physical, replace it, come down to my index of refraction and put this at 1.1. Actually 1.0. I don't think I want any refraction on this. Okay, I just want some of the glossiness that I'm going to get from it. So now I can scoot it over. So now here's my screen. I'm going to apply a Mia. Radio LCD Mia. I'm going to click on the map for color. I'm going to right click on the word file and go to as projection. It's planar, meaning it's flat. That's what kind of surface we're dealing with here. And under the file, I'm just going to go get a file. So I'm going to I can go to CG Textures and see if they have any LCD screens that I want. I don't see any. I can go to Google and type in radio LCD. I think that's what I typed in before and got nothing. That's kind of cool right there. I like that. I can also make my own in Illustrator or InDesign or anything. As long as I save it as an if, I should be good. Even something like that. Look at that. All done. All right. 107.9. So I'm just going to save the image as... Well, actually, I'll copy the image. That way I can just bring it right into Photoshop. Make a new document. Save it. You'll notice the size of this one is 1400 by 840. Because we have a lot of text and it's going to be kind of more standy outy than the other stuff, I don't mind this one being that size. So, save as, radio LCD, save it as an if, good, Maya, yes. Go to the folder, radio LCD, there it is, okay? Now it's not placed correctly. We still have, down here at the bottom, we still have our place 3D texture node we have to move. So I'm going to go to my place 3D texture, I'm going to hit select, and that's going to grab it. You'll see that it only grabs this one little face thing. It doesn't grab the whole box that's down there because that's something else. Okay? Then what I'm doing is just placing it. I'm just rotating it. So it's looking basically like straight at it. Imagine this guy's a little projector and it's shooting the image right at that thing. So I want to get it as close to the size as possible. This bottom left here is the bottom left of this image. Okay, I can even move it in and see, okay, am I right on? No, I'm actually a little bit off. So straighten it, rotate. There we go. So now let's take a little rendering view. And there we have our radio face. Perfect. Awesome. Cool. Save it. Grab this guy. Bring him back to 0. I'm going to go in the attribute editor to my focus and go to the radio. Let me go to the projection and just hit the back button until I get to the radio face or the radio LCD Mia. I don't want any reflectivity on this, or maybe I want a little bit of reflectivity. Perfect. Like it. It's working. We can add some other effects to these to this thing later. Like, see how there's a little bit of a glow? We can add that glow in a little bit later, but I think we're good with just leaving it like that. Okay. So now we want to do basically the same process for the rest of this stuff. But first, what I want to do is just get a good color for the rest of this. Okay. So let me go through, and I'm going to grab. This is going to be a little bit difficult to do because I want to grab everything but those two items I already did. So I think I'm just going to move this one over. Freeze the transforms on that one and move him over. There we go. And I'll even take this. I'm going to select that, hold shift, marquee, the rest of this. That way I get all the other pieces, and I'll just assign a Mia to them. And this is going to be the solid Mia. There we go. So I can grab these two, drop them back there. Okay, so on the solid color, I'm just going to pick, get the actual color for the whole thing. So I'm going to put a gamma on this. There we go. And pick a color. Okay, it's very reflective. It's, maybe it's the same color as this too much. So let's go and darken it. There we go. That's going to work. I say that's going to work, and I start changing stuff. Okay. All right, that's good there. All right, so now let's come back and let's go through the reflectivity and just knock the reflectivity down, maybe 1.15. We'll take the glossiness down to 0.4. Now this is just me eyeballing these things or based on experience in the past, what numbers I feel I should have in there. 0.4 seems like a good number, and that's just what I came up with. If it wasn't, then I could play with it again. And I think that's good. I like that. Let me go down to my bump. We'll drop a bump on here. I really like the way that leather turned out on the rest of this. So I'm actually going to use granite this time though. I don't want to have the same texture on everything. Just like we did in the other one, I'm just knocking these down and playing with this to get just a different bump value. Take the cell size down some. Okay, so just some different colors here, nothing special, just random variations of colors. Lower cell size to get smaller pits, and then lowered the bump. That's all I did. Oops. And I want to add some other characteristics to this. These things here should just be black. That's what those should be. Those are my little dust shields. I'm actually going to use the same black that I had from the AC vents, matte black. So I can use that. This guy down here is my headphone jack, so that's going to be chrome. I don't have a chrome yet. So I'm going to go to Mia, headphone jack, chrome, Mia. Go to presets, chrome, replace. Okay. All right, and these buttons here, I can actually make them maybe a little bit different color than the rest of the scene. And then also that little guy in the bottom right. Make him a little bit different color, make these a little bit different color. So I have some room to play with all of these. Now instead of making one material for each one of these things, okay, which would be kind of a hassle, what I can do is, or making separate materials for each one of them, I can make one material for all of them at the same time. Okay. So it's a little bit tricky to do, but I think you'll see the benefit of it over having to individually place each one of these things. Now, the good thing about doing this way is that we have more freedom to come in and move this thing as we see fit. Okay. But the benefit of doing it the other way is that we can go to one file, update all the fonts, and we're good. We don't have to jump into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different files and update all the fonts. We can just do them right there. So I'm going to go to Panels, Perspective. I'm going to make a brand new camera. And this is part of texturing, making the new camera. This is not anything animation-wise. I'm going to click on this render resolution gate. And I'm just going to zoom in as close as I can. I'm also going to come in here to my focal length and take my focal length, sorry, not down, take it up. I'm trying to flatten this image out. There we go. So you see how I flattened out the radio face, okay? Before it was like that, and I was getting a lot of, I couldn't really see the sides of these. So now with this thing at 110, or even say 180, you can see how this thing is pretty flat. Okay, so I'm leaving that there. I'm going to switch back to perspective. And if we zoom out and we go to display, show cameras, there he is. Okay, we get these guys here, which is just our other cameras. We can just hit Control H to hide those. But here is this camera shining at this thing. Okay, and this camera is going to be the projector instead of this plane being the projector. That camera is going to be the projector. There's another camera back here we can just hide. Okay, so I'm going to grab this surface. And instead of the color being this, okay, I'm going to go in here and grab the 0 to 255 values, 109, 101, 90. So I'm just going to click here. There you go, 109, 101, 90. That's the color I had. Okay. I'm going to right-click on the word color, break the connection, and then I'm going to click on here, right-click on File. Where are you at? There it is. Go to Projection, and then I'm going to project through a perspective view. Okay, so this is through a camera is how I'm doing this. So I'm going to come down to Camera and tell it which camera I want to go through, and that's going to be Perspective Shape 2. So now, if we look at this, this camera is projecting onto this object here. Okay. Now, how do we know it's going to do that? Well, let's go into Photoshop, and I'm going to make a new image, and I'm going to make it, this is our render resolution, 960 by 540. Okay. So if I make this some format of this, some proportion of this, I should be good. So I like to skip the math in here and then just make it here, but I go to image size and then just do it there. Because if I change one of these numbers to like 2048, you can see that the other one automatically changes. Okay, so that's what I want to do, is something 2048. I may even go, let's go 4096. Well, it's going to be a 27 meg file. I don't think we want that. All right, let's go 2048. That'll be good. I'm going to hit OK. Okay, and then I'm just going to, just so you can see that this is going to work, I'm going to write the word test. And I'm not very good writing with a mouse, but it works. If radio face. Okay, so now I'm just going to load in my picture of the radio face. And you can see that there is writing on the screen. So if we hit render, You can see that my text that I just typed is actually on top of the radio face. Here's the T for the first one, here's the T for the last one, the E and the S just happen to hit where that is. Okay? So now we have to figure out, okay, well, yeah, that's great, we can do that, but how do we know exactly where these buttons are? Well, if I go back to panels, and I go back to perspective and go to perspective 1, let me hit the select button here and just rename it. Project texture cam. Okay, it's exactly where I need it to be. I'm going to grab all these, right click and say lock selected. Okay, that way this is locked, that's not going to change at all. Then I can hit this render button. And what I'm doing is I'm rendering through this camera. By rendering through that camera, I should get the area of what the camera is going to look like through there, or what the texture is going to look like through there. And while we wait for it to finish syncing, there we go. So now this is what that camera is seeing. This is what it's projecting. We'll go back here, go here. That's what it's projecting. Okay. So I'm going to save this image, and we'll call this radio face projection. Save it as an if. That's fine. I'm going to go back to Photoshop, and I'm going to open up from my images folder radio face projection, and I'm just going to do Control A, Control C, Control V. Okay, now it's obviously too tiny, so I hit Control T, and I'm going to scale it up. Okay, and you can see that I'm not getting these white areas on the side. Okay, let me go back to this. I'm going to make a new layer underneath, fill it with a color, I don't care what color. Then hit Control A, Control C. Oops, sorry. Control A, Control Shift C. This would be easier if I just flatten this. If I went to layer and say flatten image, there we go. Now Control C. Now come in here and paste it, and then resize it. Okay, and we'll see that this is going to resize perfectly to fit inside here. Oops, I'm 1 pixel off. There we go. So now if you look at this, you see that the text is a tiny bit off. Okay, it's not perfectly right on there. Okay, and we'll get to getting it perfectly right on there once we get back into Maya. So what we can do now is basically use this area, this image, as a template. So if I just take this opacity down, I can clear my background. I don't need that. Okay, so we just have that flat color that we chose from the other one as our background color. And then I can make layers and just put in little text boxes. Shrink my text down. Make sure I pick a color that's visible, like black. And this will be my on button or power button. And of course, I may need to play with my settings in here because I have this set for I don't know what. Power. There we go. Put it right where I want it to be on the button. Maybe I'll make it bold. There we go. And just to test it out, oops, let me lock this top layer. Just to test it out, I'm just going to drag. Auto select is off. Why do you keep doing that? This is locked. Auto select is off. I'm on this layer. I'm just going to drag this over here and then grab both of these and drag it down there. I'm just using Alt and Control at the same time just to copy it. Okay, so those are the extremes of this. So as long as the extremes are good, I should be good. So let me save this as if back in my source images, radio face. That should be it. Yes, yes. Back to Maya, attribute editor, go to focus, file 3, because that was our last one, and reload it. And then we should see our new texture on here, and we should see those textures on these buttons once we render this out. Okay, so I can just grab this area and hit the render button. Now, like I said, we had a little bit of a movement, a little bit of area that wasn't lined up. So as I come back in here, you can see that my power is now above this and not on it. Okay, so I need to go back to this texture. So I'm gonna hit the back button to get back to the projection. And where it says fill type match camera film gate, I want to match the resolution gate. I'll hit the render button again. And I'll probably see it's still not on there. Or it's perfectly right on there. Look at that. And it's probably still a little bit off. And then under fit fill, I'm going to say horizontal. And we'll just verify that that will give us a better fit. So match camera resolution, horizontal. All right, that worked before. Sometimes you have to do that and sometimes you don't. There's a popular phrase in the Maya world, it's Maya. Just get used to it. Okay, if I come to my regular perspective view when I render this, I should still see all of those things in the exact spot that they should be in. And this is our verification that everything is working right, is having all of this stuff kind of like, bam, it's right there. Okay, and bam, it is right there. That all the buttons match up perfectly with what we need. They are a little bit low res. You can see in here, in our render view, it's hard to actually read what these words are. So I'm going to go into the material, click the arrow. Here's the image and the projection. Click that arrow. Go to the file, and under filter type, I'm going to turn this off. Whenever we have text, Maya likes to kind of fuzz it out. Whenever we have any image brought in, Maya likes to blur it a little bit. Okay, so now it's a bit clear. It's still not perfect. Okay, so I am going to take this texture size up. Image size 4096. I want to be able to see this stuff. Okay, and we're doing it at this stage at the testing phase, so we can make sure it works before we go through and create this super awesome texture, and then whoops, now we need to change some stuff. I'm sure you guys say whoops a lot. Okay, that's a little bit better. Let me actually go to my test resolution and change this back to render settings. And I'll render a full size one, just so we can see, make sure that we are seeing everything that we need to see. We'll also see that our textures are a little bit more visible at this higher res because we're working at a higher res. You're still going to have holes in your stuff. We never fixed that on yours. On mine, they're somewhat fixed, not all over. Okay, and we can see that some of these areas, yeah, this might need a little bit of nudging up, you know, and a little bit over. But the benefits of doing this are much greater than the benefits of not doing that. Okay, this guy needs to be moved over a little bit more. We can actually read the word power. These ones we'd have to get at a different camera angle to play with them. And the same thing with the other ones. Okay, so as that's going, we'll wait, I guess, because it doesn't want to do anything else. There it is. Okay, this one could probably use some moving up. This one could probably use some moving over. So you can see the benefit of this, just kind of being able to now just kind of label these things what we need and move them the correct way. So like I said, that one probably just a little bit over. So just nudge him over. This one I think was that guy. He needs to be moved over a little bit and up a little bit. Okay, let's see. This one just needs to come up a little bit. And then that guy needed to come over a little bit. Okay. So now that we have that, we can go through and put some images on here. So we can go and grab car radio buttons. And we can see all right, here's a picture of a button here. Pretty cool. They have this display, whatever. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this image, and it's actually kind of tiny. So our image is so big. Let's go through and just marquee. I'm going to delete everything else. Just scale it up. Now it's going to come out blurry. Okay, I'm recommending that you draw this stuff inside Photoshop and not just like rely on these kinds of things, because if you look at that, that's like hideous. You can't even read what that says. Okay, but you can use that as reference to say, okay, this is what I kind of want this thing to look like. So then I can go to a new layer and type in the word disp. And I can go to my vector tools. Where are they at? There they are. I can go to a custom shape tool if I need to, and go to custom shapes. I can even add more shapes inside here. Just do all, append. Look at that, buttons. We can use those later. Well, this one would be kind of like a cool one to throw on there. So I'm going to click on that guy. Click and drag while holding shift to maintain it. There we go. I don't want it to be that color. I want it to be black, so I just click on this. Go to black. Oops. I have to select it first, of course. Let's hit just double click it, then grab that. There we go. Okay, and I'll put it under disp. And I'm going to actually change, let me turn this image off that I have. I don't need that. Let me change disp to a different color. There we go. Now I also want to make sure that I don't have this kind of like bleeding off onto the other surfaces, because then we'll actually get it bleeding off onto the other surfaces. Okay. Now I want to have different color buttons. I don't want to have the exact same color buttons that I have on the rest of the radio face. Okay, I think it'll help these things kind of pop out a little bit more if they're just slightly different color. So I'm going to go to this bottom area here. I'm going to use my eyedropper and then just change the color slightly. There we go. So I just changed the color slightly just to give us a little bit different look to it. I'm also going to come through my buttons that I have here. And I'm going to change their color to white. I think that'll help them pop out as well. Let me go through and just turn on this. This will be tune. This will be search. And this one will be band. Power. Oh, this one's so small. Tune. Make that a little bigger. Power tune, search, band. Search might be a little bit too big. I may have to shrink that guy down. Or I may even have to replace it with a different item, like a magnifying glass. Okay, now I'll come into where these buttons are and use some of those custom shapes. Like, I think these ones are cool to use. Maybe I'll just put text there. Yeah, we'll just put text there. So 1 tab, space 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we size them up. I love the text tools inside Photoshop because they're just really friendly. Some extra spacing in there. Okay, so they're about the right size. Now I need to stretch them out, so I can go to here. This one, yes. I'll just space these out further. Okay, now they're not lined up correctly, so it's just going to take some some time to just kind of line these up where we need them. Cool. Alright, so we'll try that out and see if that's going to work. And then this one is some other kind of funky thing. No, I think the dots on that actually looks pretty cool. Let's get rid of that display. Let's go with those dots. Okay, you can design yours however you want. I'm just showing you what I'm doing with mine. But obviously we want it to look like it actually could be some sort of radio or something. Radio buttons. Fill, let's go with white. Alright, so I'm going to hit Control T. I'm going to move my pivot way over there. Looks like it's about the center. And now I can duplicate this. Hit Control T. What? Why don't you move? And draw out a couple guides. Now when I rotate this, you can see how it rotates around that. I'll grab both of these, duplicate them, Control T. Somehow my guides went away. Let's draw the guides again. That's the center of my button, that's the center of my button. Control T, pivot there, rotate it. Grab both of these guys, Control T, pivot there. Oops, didn't duplicate. There we go. Okay, actually I can get rid of this guy because I can take all three of these and Control T. I always forget to duplicate it. I'm used to Maya stuff where just I can automatically do a lot of these things. There we go. So now let me grab all of these, duplicate them, Control T, move my pivot down here, rotate it around, good. Okay. I'm going to group these guys so that I can duplicate them. Drag it to the new layer group, scoot it over here, turn my reference back on so I can line it up. There we go. So now let's try it out and see how it looks. If radio face, yes, yes, yes. Reload our image. There we go. We get the new image. Let's save the old image. Let's save Maya. Let's go in Photoshop and save in here. We want to save this as a PSD. Okay, so we save a PSD into our folder too. And that way we can always get back to it. You can always edit the layers again. If you don't save it as a PSD, you can't edit the layers. And we'll see that our whole screen is just a bit darker because we darkened the entire thing. And I can also see that the knobs here, the little lights here, are a little bit too close to the edge and they're like streaking down the side. So we'll have to fix that. Now, like I said before, we can do, or you can do if you want, individual images on each one of these things. But if you want to change the background on one, you have to go into each file and change them on all of them. Okay? But you do get a little bit more play as far as, okay, I need power moved over, so you can nudge power a little bit over. I need band moved over, you can just do that here. I need these a little bit lower, you can do that here. Okay, so I can see what the issues are. I'm going to hit undo. I'm going to go back to Photoshop. I'm going to take my first group. I have two groups apparently. Leave that. And I'm just going to nudge this guy over and maybe even shrink him down just to verify that he's actually in there and not just out. And I'll actually scoot this guy down a little bit too. There we go. I like the dots in there. I think that's a cool little touch to it. My numbers need some work, scooting them up. So we'll go back to Photoshop, grab my numbers. That's good. Band can come over more, power can come over more. Okay, let's save that out. Back to Maya. Back to our image. Reload it. And re-render. The good thing about Maya, there's never an absence of not enough repetition. In this whole process, we're going to do the same exact thing for the bottom of this, where we have the AC controls. We're going to do the exact same thing, but obviously it's going to go a little bit quicker because we don't have as many buttons down there. Okay, I think that's working. I like the way all the stuff on here is like placed, and now we have the things. It's good.